So my sketches here, just to remind me of the measurements I selected while I was designing the mat. I'm going to take this set scale and I'm going to put it back on its track. And so you just want to remember to kind of look at these guys, okay? And then the set scale always goes to the left. And this part that sticks up, which is going to hold the mat board in place to set the border, is going to go on the right and like closest to the straight edge part. Okay, and so this should just kind of drop and slide in there. Once it's in, you're going to read the scale on this side, okay, where it says set scale. And so I'm going to line that edge up with the 3-inch mark here. Okay, so there's centimeters on top and then there's inches on the bottom. I'm going 3 inches around the top and the side, so I'm gonna set it at that. And so once it's in place, it's lined up, I just screw these guys in, just like fingertip tight. You don't wanna like screw them so tight that you can't get them out again. Once they're screwed in tight, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my mat board inside underneath the straight edge. Oop, this guy's still in there. I gotta take him out. That was from the short edge that I cut. Okay, and I'm gonna push this so it's flush against the set scale portion, okay? And so because I'm drawing this one at 3 inches, that is going to be the top of my window mat. So I always like to mark the top of my window mat just to make my life easier in the future with just a little arrow, like this is the top. Okay, and the arrow is pointing up. Once I have that marked, I'm just gonna take my pencil and right across the back of the mat, I'm just gonna make a line at that 3-inch mark. Now I'm also going to do the left side and the right side like that. Always make Okay, now for the bottom, I'm going to add an extra 1/2 inch. You might remember that from my sketch and my plan that I made, that for the bottom I wanted 3.5 inches. So I'm going to change the set scale to 3.5. Okay, so to map out the grid for the windows and to sketch out the entire area of windows that I'm going to cut out, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small ruler and I need to measure these out by hand. So I can't use the straight set or the set scale on the Logan mat cutter to do this. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to map it out with a ruler. And so I have my sketch here to help me. And so this is the top, this is the bottom. I am actually going to, because I'm standing on the opposite side of the mat board, like at the top of the mat board right here, I'm going to measure kind of from the bottom up. And so what I'm going to do is inside of the window is where I'm going to set my ruler. So now that I'm inside of the window right here at this lower left corner, I know that my bottom artwork, and well, all of my artworks are going to be 5 inches tall. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure up 5 inches and make a little tick mark. After that, I'm going to measure up 2 inches. Okay, and then it's always good to check and just make sure I have 5 inches remaining here. Okay, so I have 5-inch height of an artwork, 2-inch border, 5-inch height of an artwork. Because these are all the same across, I can go over here and I can go ahead and I can do the same thing at this corner. After measuring out the height of the photos and the divider on the left side, I'm now going to repeat that on the right side. And so I'm just measuring the 5-inch height and the 2-inch divider between the photos on the right-hand side. Now I'm going to take a longer ruler and I'm going to connect the tick marks across from each other. So now I'm connecting the top 2 tick marks, and then I will connect the bottom 2 tick marks that form the divider between the 2 rows of photos. You could also complete this step with a T-square. The next thing that I need to do is measure across for each of the photos and also the 2 dividers between the columns. And so the next thing I can do is I'm going to line up, remember this is the top, and I'm going to line up my ruler with this top corner, and then I'm going to measure over 7.5. And then you may remember that the dividers between my photos are, between the 3 columns are 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and measure over 1.5. Okay, and then I can either measure over 7 again, or I can go over here and I can measure 7 from here. Or 7.5 rather, sorry. 7.5. Okay, and then 1.5 for the border between. And then I always like to check and just make sure that this is 7.5 for the third artwork in the middle. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to do the same thing. So again, you may end up devising something completely different from your work. I would imagine that you probably will. It really depends on the amount of pieces that you're putting together into a collection. Okay, so just to demonstrate how to use the T-square, I'm just gonna pull the mat board off the edge of the desk a little bit. I'm gonna put the T-square down. I wanna make sure that the T part of the T-square is flush with the edge of the mat board right across here. And then I go ahead and I line it up with my tick marks. Okay, and I'm gonna look at the tick mark here, look at the tick mark down here, make sure that they are lined up, make sure that this is flush against the mat board. Okay, and once all is good, I'm going to take my pencil and just draw it right down there. Okay, and then I'll shift it over for the next thing, for the next set of tick marks. Okay, then I'm just going to continue to move down with the T-square to connect the tick marks that I measured out. The T-square just makes it so that way I can have nice straight lines. You could easily do this with a ruler as well, seeing as you have 2 reference points across from one another to connect. You could do it with just a ruler. However, if you're someone who feels like things always look crooked, a T-square might be the way to go. Okay, so now that I have all of my windows mapped out, I always like to put an X over what's going to get cut out where an artwork is going to go, just because it helps me to remember how to put the mat board into the bevel cutter. Okay, because it does get a little tricky cutting these edges with the bevel cutter, and that's where we're going.